Hare Krishna. As we welcome you to the 6th episode of our Vartalap series, our journey of inspiration continues to discover newer insights in the lives of soldiers of Srila Prabhupada.
We are very fortunate to be in conversation with one of the very early disciples of Srila Prabhupada. She has been practicing Krishna Consciousness for more than half a century now and has seen it grow from a small family to a worldwide organization.
She is an activist in women's spiritual empowerment and interfaith dialogues. She is also a member of Board of Directors at Bhakti Center, New York City.
She writes, teaches and leads spiritual workshops and retreats internationally. The famous Kirtan artist Gaurvani Prabhuji is her son. So, let's welcome together Her Grace Rukmini Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for being here with us in this journey of inspiration. So today we have a very special guest with us. She is one of the early disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Her Grace Rukmini Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. We are so grateful and indebted that you are here with us on this show.
Thank you so much.
So I'll start with the questions, Mataji. So my first question is that you came to this movement when you were in the Western world. So what made you trust in Indian Swami to surrender your life in this Krishna Consciousness movement?
Srila Prabhupada came to us as an effulgent personality beyond the material world. He was not just an ordinary Indian Swami. His vast knowledge, his mercy, his humor, his just his whole persona of transcendentalness. He was presenting a culture that couldn't have been more different from the culture of America at that time. New York, San Francisco was a revolutionary time when we were all many of the youth were rejecting the values of our parents. And he presented a whole different worldview that was inclusive and full of compassion, full of knowledge, full of wisdom, full of humor, and completely beyond this world. I often think of my father. My father was from New York, and just a short time before he died, my father was appreciating Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying that Srila Prabhupada came to the very place where he used to hang out with his friends on the Lower East Side of New York. And Srila Prabhupada, somehow all these young people who wouldn't accept any authority accepted him, and how great he was that he was able to inspire us and lead us.
How do you see ISKCON as developing as an organization, ISKCON of 1960s, if we see in regard to ISKCON 2020?
We often hear that an astrologer once said that Srila Prabhupada, he looked at a picture of Prabhupada and he said, this man can build a house in which the whole world can live. So I often think of, what is the foundation? What are the pillars of that house? What is the nature of that house? And we hear that the 5 most important principles of Krishna consciousness are Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavat Shravan. So associating with devotees, chanting the holy names, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, worshipping the deities in love, and trying to make our homes and our temples like holy places like Vrindavan. So I think these are the pillars and the foundations of the Krishna consciousness movement. And I think this is what we really need to hand down to future generations in a dynamic way. Love for hearing about Krishna, that bring, Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, that we should feel joy in our lives in relishing these things, and we should be able to imbibe that in the future, in the kids and in the future generations. And this will bring great happiness in life, peace and happiness and joy in life, and also help us to go back to the spiritual world at the end of life. So I think this is really the pillars and the foundation of the house that Srila Prabhupada gave, in which the whole world can live. This is, these are really transcendental bhakti principles that are beyond any kind of sectarian religion, I think are so important.
You're a source of inspiration for so many devotees around the world. So what's your fine piece of advice for all the women out there for being a devotee, a wife, a mother and a Krishna lover?
Srila Prabhupada once said that the women in Krishna consciousness, or the Vaishnavis, are Lord Chaitanya's secret weapons for spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. And there's nothing more sacred than being a wife and a mother, a loving wife and loving mother, and creating like the mother is the first guru, right? Even more than the father, the mother is the first guru. So creating that foundation at home so that the children feel peaceful and satisfied and can have a foundation in their lives for a deep peace and realization as they go forward into their lives. In addition to that, we each have unique gifts that are given to us by Krishna, by God. Each one of us is as unique as a snowflake. I often think of this, that each snowflake, although it lasts only a moment, is unique and beautiful. So we each have unique gifts given to us by God, and those are God's gifts to us, and what we do with those gifts are our gifts to God, to Krishna. So I think in addition to that sacred foundation of building a family, I think there are also unique gifts that each of us have. And I would say that Srila Prabhupada never stereotyped women, that women can't do this and can't do that and shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that, as many people in the Krishna consciousness movement today are saying. He gave the women devotees full range to develop their potential in whatever ways they felt inspired. So I think that's very important.
So Mataji, my next question is, how do you define your spiritual journey over these many years? So do you find your perspectives, they are still the same, or they have matured, or they have completely changed?
I think my journey as a part of the Krishna consciousness movement, I mean, of course, as you get older, you do mature, and hopefully. But I would say in the beginning years, in the 1960s, the Krishna consciousness movement, especially in San Francisco, was like a family. It was a very loving family. And then devotees in the early 70s started coming to India, and there were many details that we learned, many things to enhance our Krishna consciousness. But I think devotees also sometimes picked up some sectarian or caste conscious ideas when they came to India, and brought back certain ideas that were not so much in the spirit of Srila Prabhupada's original teachings. So there's a difference between understanding the spirit of the law, or the spirit of what Srila Prabhupada was giving, and just the letter or the external understanding of what he gave. So in our Krishna conscious from the Goswamis, we have these words niyamagraha, niyamagraha. So niyamagraha would be to be looking very, very strictly at the rules or the letter of the law, and niyamagraha would be giving up, whimsically giving up the rules just out of sentimentality. So maybe in India there's more of a tendency of devotees to go to, let's look at what's Vedic and what's more original. And in the West, maybe devotees tend to whimsically give up the strict following. So I think Srila Prabhupada really gave an essence of teaching bhakti that was beyond what is Vedic or what is not Vedic. He would accept or reject Vedic ideas or Vedic principles according to whether they would enhance our Krishna consciousness. So I think many devotees these days are not understanding that essence of what Srila Prabhupada gave, and just tending to dwell on the externals. So that's very important, to be an essence seeker and try to understand the true spirit of what Srila Prabhupada gave and how we can follow it and how we can live it. So I was thinking that a great acharya like Srila Prabhupada, what he gave was like molten lava. It was like fire, and when it touches you, you know, there's no question when you've been touched by fire. But then over time, that molten lava can become cold, hard, calcified, and just institutionalized in dry ways. So I think we have to be very, very careful in the Krishna Consciousness movement that our hearts remain like, really truly to follow Srila Prabhupada, that our hearts remain like that molten lava with enthusiasm and inspiration to serve in so many creative ways as he lived and as he taught. He was so out of the box. I think many devotees don't realize that Srila Prabhupada was not a stereotyped thinker. He was not an in-the-box thinker. He would always do or say the most unexpected or introduce the most unexpected things that would always surprise us. So I think that's a pillar of how we need to understand him, that he was teaching transcendental bhakti principles that would reject the externals wherever they were not helpful. So that's my understanding.
You are a mother and a grandmother of some wonderful kids. So according to you, for a devotee, what kind of education should parents try to give so that their kids are successful in their life ahead and also they are deeply rooted in their Vaishnav culture?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's so important that the children learn love for Krishna, love for Kirtan early in their lives. And I think that we tend to maybe disempower or not understand the tremendous capacity that kids have. There's so many examples. Gopal's Garden in Mumbai, and I was in Mumbai also at Mirror Road, and there's a wonderful devotee who's teaching kids there. And there were children who came and chanted the whole, like one little boy chanted the Nishringa Kavacha, all the prayers, Nishringadev prayers, and another little girl chanted the prayers of Rukmini from Srimad Bhagavatam. So one after another, and it was astounding actually the capacity that these children have for understanding. But not just memorizing shlokas. I think we have to look at the tremendous capacity that children have, but again, children can't be stereotyped, and we have to look at their own individual tendencies. Not all children are little shloka chanters and little robots that they're going to do everything the way we think they should do. So it's very important that we hear each other in Krishna consciousness, hear the people in our outreach, hear the people that we're trying to connect with, and hear our children also, and what are their needs, and what are their interests, and how can they best serve. Sometimes the parents are very determined that my son is going to be a perfect brahmachari, but maybe he has a different tendency in life. And I'd say that my son Gaurvani was really very rebellious, and now he's teaching kirtan all over the world, but he would always go the opposite way, and he was a difficult child. So we have to really look at how they can be inspired. So Gaurvani has a joke that he often will say to me, that every mother in the ISKCON society is holding up the example of Radhika Raman Prabhu, who is Dr. Ravi Gupta. He and his younger brother got their PhDs at Oxford University after being homeschooled by their mother. So Gaurvani's joke is that he says every mother in the Krishna Consciousness movement is saying to her son, "You bum, why aren't you Ravi Gupta?" So please cut that out if it's inappropriate, but it is quite funny. And I think, the mothers have these aspirations. My son is going to be this, or my daughter is going to be that. And usually they go the opposite way. So we have to really highly regard their own sacred individuality. That's our philosophy. If we think that we're all homogeneous, the same, and should serve in the same way, this is, Prabhupada described, this is impersonalism. Each of us has our own unique tendencies, and those have to be regarded as sacred gifts from God and our sacred gifts back to God. So it's not easy for parents to do that.
Yes.
Like yesterday, for example, there was a mother asking me for advice about how to help her son who has challenges. And I said to her, you know, sports are very important for boys. And I think she and her husband were really shocked that I was saying that. You know, I was telling her swimming is good medicine, and sports, you know, they can learn how to win and how to lose with grace. And I think, you know, they were really quite shocked because they were thinking more that he should be chanting shlokas all the time. But maybe he's not the type of child who will thrive by only chanting shlokas. So just a few thoughts on that.
Just now, like you told about Gaurvani Prabhuji. So on one side you just said that how he was so rebellious and difficult. So Mataji, what kind of culture did you provide him, and how did you upbring him? And now he's famous worldwide for his enchanting kirtans. So what were your steps towards this?
I would say I made a lot of mistakes and tried different things, and I think as parents we all make mistakes, and that's all right. You know, we can't always be doing everything right and our children forgive us, but it's so important to keep communication lines open with them no matter what they do. I know Radhanath Swami spoke about his father, that his father always told him that, son, no matter what you do in life, even if you end up in prison, I'll always be there for you. So that's an amazing example also. But I think there are times when teenagers like to rebel and think, oh, there's nothing in the temple for me. I'm not interested in this. I'm only interested in my friends, and they have their peer pressure. So it's very important, I'd say, for not only for children, for parents, for married people, but for everyone in society to not isolate themselves. So sometimes we see in the ISKCON society that sannyasis will isolate themselves, or gurus will isolate themselves, or married people think, oh, we are the only ones who understand each other and no one else understands us, or teenagers isolate themselves, or so isolation is like a kind of death. And we're social beings, and we all need loving community and loving society that gives us space to find our own identities and our own ways of loving and serving Krishna. And Krishna has so much variety in the spiritual world. And again, I think it's our own impersonal tendencies, our own misunderstandings when we think, oh, everyone has to be in a box and everyone should serve in the way that I serve or the way I understand. But the spiritual world is not like that. There's there's so many arguments and fights and politics and groups of, you know, different groups, and it's just full of fun and full of games, and so we need to make space also for different ways of thinking, that not everyone is the same and not everyone will thrive in the same way. And my children might be very different from me, or the way I think, or the way I was brought up. And we have to really, I think hearing is so important. We tend to, you know, we're preachers, right, in ISKCON, so we tend to preach. And I'll tell you how things should be, but really people need to be heard. And we need to hear each other, we need to really hear our kids, we need to hear from our husbands and wives, what are your needs, and how can I help you thrive and be the best person you can be in your service to Lord Krishna. And I think great teachers, great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada and other great teachers in the ISKCON society are very good at this, really being able to hear and being able to see how can different kinds of people be inspired in different ways.
Mataji, you have been leading a lot of interfaith dialogues. So we want to know what exactly is interfaith and how is it significant?
Well, Srila Prabhupada would often say that he would say, I have not come to convert Christians into Hindus. And I don't think that we really took him that seriously when he said that. Sometimes we would get kind of into the weeds of the details of certain things, but he would say, whatever religion you're following will be tested by how much you've developed your love of God. So he had regard for the teachings of Muhammad. He had regard for the teachings of Jesus Christ. And he would often express that. And I think that was something very important as Western people that attracted us, that he wasn't saying that what he was giving was the best, but he, by his actions and by his own ecstatic love and example, he showed that he was realizing the deep qualities in Krishna Bhakti. So I would say that there are two principles. There's our own exclusive love for our Krishna, which is something we cherish inside ourselves and in our own community. But there's also an inclusivity when we look at other traditions of faith that teach love of God. So there's an exclusivity that faces in, and there's an inclusivity that gives a broad perspective and regard for other traditions of faith in the world. And maybe I can share some of the comments that have been made in some of our dialogues that are very interesting. Well, first of all, I was thinking of Srila Prabhupada's comment when he was in Tehran. The devotees there were trying to teach the people in Iran to chant Hare Krishna. At that time, it was before the Iranian Revolution. And they were doing Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan on the street. And they said, one devotee was asking Srila Prabhupada, the people here, they like Hare Krishna Kirtan, but they really like the Muslim call to prayer more. And Srila Prabhupada was saying, yes, it's so beautiful. The Muslim call to prayer is so beautiful. And then the devotee said, but Srila Prabhupada wouldn't it be better if they chanted Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada said, why are you trying to make me sectarian? Which was an amazing statement. Why are you trying to make my teachings sectarian? In another instance, something I wanted to share was that one Christian scholar that we were interacting with said such a tremendous appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. He said that never has a Western culture been so impacted by an Eastern religion since Christianity came to Rome.
Like the nature of this world is that everything comes down with time. And on the other hand, even the same applies to our devotional practices also. Maybe a few years down the line, we don't feel that enthusiastic or that energetic to practice Krishna consciousness. But on one side, we see you. It's been more than half a century you have been connected to this movement. And your enthusiasm is increasing day by day. So what's the secret behind that?
It's Srila Prabhupada would give the example of a cold iron rod, but when the rod is put into the fire, it becomes warmer and warmer, and then that rod can also act as fire. So it's important to keep in association, in sangha, with the holy name, with hearing the words of Srila Prabhupada, hearing the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. And also there's the metaphor of how Krishna is like a big fire and we're just like little sparks. So sparks in fire are always flying, and when they're in sangha with the fire, they're dancing, bright, joyful. But when they isolate, when they spin out, then they become cold and dark and dead. So we always have that choice. Each one of us can try to, I think it's a good thing to pray to Krishna, to ask Krishna, let me always remember to chant your name, let me always remember to be hearing, always remind me how I can stay in Sangha and find inspiring Sangha by hearing and by the people I'm with in my life. So each one of us has the freedom to choose at every moment, and to ask to be reminded to be in Sangha, enjoy dancing, and in joyful Sangha, and not isolate ourselves. We always have that choice.
So Mataji, we all want to know one of your most humorous moment with Srila Prabhupada and one of the most grave moment with Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada could be so spontaneously humorous even in tense situations, and he would come out with some very humorous statements. One story that occurs to me is that a very tense time, a very difficult time was in Vrindavan. I was living in Vrindavan when the temple was supposed to open, and Srila Prabhupada had invited dignitaries from all over the world and invited devotees from all over the world, and many people had their tickets and were planning to come. But when he came to Vrindavan, the temple was nowhere near being ready to open, and he was very, very angry, and it was very embarrassing for him. He had invited the chief minister of UP to come, and so it was difficult for everyone, very, very tense, and Srila Prabhupada became very ill. Actually, devotees all over the world were chanting the Nishingadev prayers for him because he almost left us at that time. So at that time he kept calling Yamuna Devi to come to cook for him, and it was a very difficult situation, and she didn't feel like she was in the right consciousness to come and cook for him. So he kept asking her to come, and she wasn't coming. And so finally he demanded that she come. And she was there sitting in his room in Vrindavan in his house. And Prabhupada began speaking about himself like Lord Balaram. It was very subtle, and most people didn't understand what he was doing. But he said, Balaram is very strong. He can drag Yamuna. Yamuna does not want to come, but Balaram can drag Yamuna. He can drag the whole city of Hastinapur if he wants. And it was really a most amazing exchange. She was just sitting in the corner just weeping. She completely understood. So, of course, Prabhupada was not considering himself Lord Balaram, but the Guru is the representative. Balaram is the Guru Tattva. So he was speaking in such a poignant way of how he could drag Yamuna. That was very beautiful. Then the other example I was mentioning, that he would sometimes, he often would quote Bengali sayings, and they could be very like little granny wisdom. And so one he would often quote, and sometimes if you listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, you can hear him say under his breath some of these things. So there's one in particular he would say when his managers, he felt, were becoming overly proud or overstepping their bounds. So he would say, big, big monkey, big, big belly, Selan jumping. He tries to jump to Selan, like Hanuman, but he's melancholy. So sometimes in Prabhupada's talks you can hear him under his breath going, big monkey, big belly. So he could be very, very humorous. And even during the last days when he was really leaving this world, he could be just interject some little joke, what will you drink, Srila Prabhupada? Will you please have some? Have a few sips of orange juice. And he would say, I will drink Harinam Amiya Vilas. I will drink the holy name. So he could be just so charmingly self-effacing and also humorous. Should I tell another story? Is there time for a story? Okay, so I'll tell the story I told the girls yesterday. I've told this before. So, Premanjan, I don't know if you've heard this one before, but so this time was just after Rath Yatra festival in Berkeley, California, after the San Francisco Rath Yatra. And one of the BBT artists, one of the painters who was painting for Srila Prabhupada's books, pulled a copy of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya off the bookshelf. And he said, Srila Prabhupada, when we see pictures of Lord Chaitanya, we see that he had quite long hair. And Prabhupada would always understand the mentality with which the question was being asked. So it seems as though he understood that this young man was thinking, why do we have to shave our heads if Lord Chaitanya had long hair? So Prabhupada, in such a charming way, he said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie. And then it was so funny because then he said, therefore he has come to save you. But because of his Bengali accent, we weren't sure if he was saying save you or shave you. So then he picked up on that and he was just laughing and repeating that over and over again. Lord Chaitanya has come to save you and shave you, save you and shave you. He was laughing, laughing, laughing. That was so funny. Yeah. And then sometime he could be like a thunderbolt if someone was acting inappropriately or being proud. So yeah, he was a wonderful prism of many beautiful qualities.
I'll come to the last question. It's a rapid fire round. So you have to answer in very less words, maybe one word or just few words. So
this is the style of Punjabi Bhag, full of surprises.
I'll start, Mataji. What comes to your mind when you think of love?
Unalloyed love, unconditional love.
One piece of advice for the new leaders.
Be magnanimous. To be Krishna conscious means to follow the magnanimous mood of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Do not try to create an inquisition within the Krishna consciousness movement.
One value that you value the most.
Humility, gratitude and humility.
Your favorite place?
The sitting place of Lord Chaitanya at Shamakund, where he would look over at Radhakund. Gauranga Baitak, they call it.
Your favorite community to be in?
So many different flavors. That's an impossible question to ask. Yeah, there's so many different fragrances and different flavors, but yeah, it's so many temples, different beautiful highlights, you know. I love the flower festival at Radha Gopinath Temple at Chaupati. I love having the darshan of Balaji at the temple at Pune, the ISKCON temple at Pune. Punjabi Bhag has its own spontaneous, beautiful flavor. Everyone is so loving and enthusiastic. And in Washington, D.C., we have a wonderful temple. We have a woman temple president, actually, and she is really all about education. And she's always creating new, different venues for educating the devotees in creative ways. So I love her temple there. I love the Bhakti Center in New York. And yeah, wherever devotees have the spirit of being essence seekers and people-centered projects, I think those projects thrive.
Your nuggets on balancing material and spiritual life?
I think life comes in waves, and what what it means to be in balance when you're a new mom with a brand new baby might be very different from what it means to be in balance when you're in another phase of life. So sometimes we think, my life is always going to look like this in the chaos that it's in now, but things change and values change, and people grow and mature, and children change and grow and mature. So just to try to be, take a deep breath and offer that very moment you're in as an offering to Krishna, and know that things are not going to be like this 5 minutes from now or 10 years from now. So.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for all these wonderful insights. I'm sure there is so much to take from this, personally for me also. Thank you so much, Mataji.